Hola, soy Henry de Nueva York y escucho el E.I.T.H.R podcast con mi amigo D.Cal.
Yo, what up, folks? This is Rodney Farrell, the CEO of Farrell Development Group, and you're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast hosted by D.Cal. Let's get it.
You're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with your host, D.Cal.
Good Monday, ladies and gentlemen. It is D.Cal here on the Elephant in the Room, also known as the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Welcome to the show. We are at episode number 27. Damn. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was, and debated whether I wanted to do a podcast or not. And here we are, 27 episodes deep. So I want to say thank you very much to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed, who has liked, who has been involved in the chat conversations, who has participated on social media and all that. This, ladies and gentlemen, is for all of y'all. Thank you very much. None of this would be possible without you, ladies and gentlemen, participating and making this show worth a damn. I just want to say thank you very much. Here we're broadcasting from the GNS Inc. headquarters here in Sacramento, California. Today is not in the triple digits, so thank goodness for that. I remember growing up, I used to love the heat. God, I love the heat. I would go out in all black, long sleeve shirt, hat, go to the basketball court, look for anybody who we want to fix their mouth like it's hot outside and challenge them to a one-on-one. Now I get hot looking at youngsters in hoodie t-shirts, hooded sweaters, sweatpants, with hats on, long hair, walking, having a good time. I'm like, you guys are making me sweat in my AC car. It's part of when you get to a certain age, I guess the body doesn't regulate the heat like it used to. It's crazy. But anywho, if you guys are on social media, I would like for you to participate in following us on the Instagram page, or if you're more of a sophisticated type who likes to follow people on the Twitter, so we can do the tweet thing, you can follow us. The handle is the same. It's actually at the E.I.T.H.R, THEEITHR. Greatly appreciate if you guys follow, participate, and kind of been part of the movement. There on the Instagram page, for those of you who are tuning into the page from my Facebook feed or on YouTube, you can actually go to Spreaker.com, log in, create an account, and you can chat live with me actually as I'm broadcasting the broadcast of the podcast. As I said before, on the YouTube page, you can just search the GNS Inc., which is the parent company, so THEGNSINC, and you'll see it right there. Go ahead and subscribe to that. I said this last episode, which is last week, that we are in the process transferring everything from the YouTube page also to our very own internet TV station. So if anybody has any media content that you want to do, video, short film, anything live that you want to kind of help put out there in the world, not just in social media, but a different outlet to get to a different market, you're more than welcome to hit us up, and we'll see what we can go ahead and make that happen for you. All right, greatly appreciate that, because we're always looking to give back. You know, if I eat, we all can get full. That's pretty much what the motto is. Anyone who follows the podcast know I like to lead out with shout outs. And the shout out that I want to go ahead and give out today is to everyone out there who is putting up with the BS that ever you got to go through, right? I mean, it's the middle of summer. Everybody's hot and irritated. Everyone's a little bit bothered. Everyone's a little bit short. The gas prices are starting to go down just a little bit. But keep in mind, man, everyone's kind of going through their own little battles about what it is that they're going through. So if you're able to make it through one more week, I mean, you know, congratulations. The day is halfway over with some of us. The other half is starting to begin. So, you know, make your days end better than they started. So I just want to make sure that I give a shout out to you guys up there who, you know, busting your ass to do the best you can with whatever it is that you currently got. All right. Now, what I want to do is an inspiration, motivation type of shout out that usually comes right after the shout out to people. Kind of give some inspiration to help people become better thems as much as they can. I do tend to follow what it is I preach. So a lot of these things that I suggest for you, you can believe 90%, being honest, I apply myself. The other 10% is because of my schedule. Sometimes I do forget and neglect to do certain things, but you better believe that I do try to practice what it is that I preach. Because if I don't, then my words hold no weight and they have no heartbeat to them. So at night or whenever you get home, what I like to do is I love music playing in the background when I come home. So you can hear the music right there in the background of the podcast, courtesy of GNS Entertainment. I connect my phone to my Bluetooth speaker. And so what I do is I walk into my front door and music's playing. And my father used to tell me, you know, music soothes the savage beast. And so whatever it is that I'm going through in the outside world, the moment I walk through my front door, the music usually helps decompress that, because my imagination immediately starts to run to wherever the music is taking me. So you guys might want to try giving that a shot. You know, just walk in, set your music to whatever you have going on. You know, whatever brand of music you listen to, that kind of helps you decompress and relax. You take that deep breath, you exhale, you take the shoes off, you take up the coat, you set down the bag or the purse, and you just let the melody take you. And most of the times you don't think, you just do. And sometimes we just need to turn our brains off in order for us to be able to relax. And Lord knows, one of my brain is one of the most complicated things that I got going on in my life, because it never shuts up. And it's always running about what needs to be done, what can we improve, what can we jump on. And, you know, I think that would help a lot of people who have brains similar to that. And it definitely does work. So just want to go ahead and put that out there. Two things that I want to talk about today in the podcast. If you see in the description, Marvel, for those who are not aware, I'm a big time Marvel fan. Now I'm not going to be one of these people who, you know, I'm a diehard Marvel fan, because, you know, that's subjective, right? But I'm a huge Marvel fan. My dad was a big time comic book fan before I was born. And this man had issues upon issues upon issues, he would tell me. And my grandmother's house caught fire once, and they were not able to save any of the comic books. So unfortunately, my dad passed away before, you know, Marvel started to become a really big thing in the movies. And so he would have loved to have seen some of the things that's dropped in the film for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in San Diego, California, they had their Comic-Con, and they released phases, I believe 5 and phase 6. So like I said, there's 2 films I'm super excited to get into. And the first one I'm excited is Daredevil. I think my dad's favorite Marvel comic character was Spider-Man, which is common. Spider-Man is like one of those dudes where everybody loves Spider-Man. You know, if you don't really like Spider-Man, you really have no soul. But Spider-Man was like his guy. But Daredevil is a comic character that my dad, he admired the background of the character. When he was a young boy, he lost his vision because of a chemical accident when he was a child, and so he lost his vision, and so he had to go about living the rest of his life blind. And his dad used to be a boxer. I'm talking about Daredevil, the Marvel character. And so his dad got kind of caught up in some owing some money to some people, and things happened, and his father was, for lack of better terms, taken away from him. And so he became a crime fighter. I mean, kind of just get straight to the bullet points of the character Daredevil. And so he is a lawyer by day and a vigilante at night. So I want you to think of, for lack of better terms, you could think of Daredevil as a blind Batman dressed in red. His alias is also the Man Without Fear. And he uses his hypersensitive sense of sound to see what's around him. Kind of like sonar, if you will. That's kind of how his power works. And so the character is coming out in a full-fledged movie. It was a Netflix series, which in my opinion, the Netflix series was dope. It was so good. It was really, really, really good. I liked it. Matt Murdock is Daredevil's name, and Daredevil is his alias. And he's part of a group called the Defenders. And just so those who don't know, the Defenders are like the Earth version of the Avengers, right? So everyone understands how the Avengers work. Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Thor, Hawkeye. They kind of deal more with your intergalactic, terrestrial, dimensional type of enemies, right? The Defenders are more of your lower level on Earth, where they take care of your organized crime syndicate, black market type of mafia, resurrecting dead, pay off corruption type of thing. That's what the Defenders do, based out of Hell's Kitchen in New York. So the Defenders had a series on Netflix, because it's part of Disney. It's Marvel, and Marvel bought out Disney. Right. Disney bought out Marvel. All that's now switched to Disney Plus. But when it was on Netflix, I should say, Daredevil had 2-3 seasons. And then you had Jessica Jones. Then you had Iron Fist. You had Luke Cage. You had Punisher. And then you had the Defenders had their series. And so if anyone watches Disney Plus now, you've got Moon Knight, which is a character with, who is the avatar of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Trust me, this is going to sound like off the chain if you don't really follow it. Kind of just like, what the fuck is he talking about? But if you pay attention to the comic and watch the series, it all kind of falls into place. And what I love about how Marvel does it is they do kind of drop Easter eggs with each film. So when you watch, film number 2, it shows how it's connected to film number 1, if you pay attention. And it might drop hints to film number 3 and number 4, for example. So you're kind of able to see how it all connects into place. And I told people, if you start watching these series on Disney Plus, like Loki and Hawkeye and Captain America and the Winter Soldier, and you kind of see how all those are going to tie in, because eventually they're going to bring them to the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, with all that said, with Daredevil finally hitting the big screen, it's going to catapult the quote-unquote Disney series that they have into the cinematic universe, which he's going to play a huge part of it, because he can now, if you will, be like the legal aid for all the heroes. A lot of people know about Hulk, the alternate ego of Bruce Banner. Well, he has a cousin. I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she is the She-Hulk, and she's also legal aid in New York for a lot of the superheroes. And so there's certain comics where, you'll have like a bunch of superheroes in her office because of, they got into some shit, they got into a fight, or they damaged some property, or they did something, and they need legal counsel. And so she's kind of like the mother / attorney for everybody. She's, in my opinion, she's not as strong as the Hulk, but I would probably say her ability is her quickness and her speed. And she's not a pawn. Like, she's like a green Ronda Rousey, just stupid swole, and like this. If for all my wrestling fans, if you take Ronda Rousey and the late Chyna from WWF, and Ronda Rousey and Chyna, like Chyna Rousey, were to have like a mutant daughter who just did nothing but weights and track and field, that will be She-Hulk, who also studies law and is one of the best attorneys in New York. That's who she is. So they're bringing her now into the whole Disney mix, and eventually I think they're going to bring her to the big screen, which will be dope, because I've always was a fan of She-Hulk. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the Daredevil movie. Now, the next one that I'm looking forward to, if you haven't seen the trailer for this film, it's one of the trailers. If you ever see a preview of something, and this preview gets you emotional, like it just draws you in, where you're in awe the whole damn time. This preview is it. This was, I literally am not kidding you. I saw the preview. I watched it myself on repeat at least, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not embellishing this whatsoever, at least 7 times. Because it was such a powerful preview to watch. And the movie's coming out in just a few months, which is ridiculous. And I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when I come back, what movie it is.
What you know about the dopest dispensary in OKC with wheels? It's the only dispensary in OKC with wheels. Hot box delivery service. Discreet and dependable with all the biggest name brands and exotics, including Cookies, Backpack Boys, Jokes Up, Rap Packs, Ballin' Jars, Ballin' Bars, Cars, and more. Make sure you hit them up at 405-835-0222, 405-835-0222, 405-835-0222, hotboxdeliveryok.com.
Crush all the struggles and pressures that get in your way, big or small, minor or major. We all are fighting demons that others do not know about. But it's how you handle it that makes it look easy. Shop at Mile.today. Again, Mile, MILE.today. Mile.today.
Okay, so the movie that I was just talking about, when you see this preview, it's so dope. The way they set this movie up, the way they set the preview up, it's just, and you can't wait to see it, man. And in the comment section, you see people talking about how the pictures and the music, oh God, the music, how the lighting and everything is just off the hook. And the movie I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the second Black Panther movie, Wakanda Forever. Like, it honestly looks like it could be better than the first one. And you go on this huge emotional roller coaster watching. At least I did. And within the first few hours, you had damn near 100,000 likes on the Facebook post from Marvel Cinema that released the trailer. And if you haven't seen the trailer, I'm not going to get into what's on the trailer, what's in the trailer. But it definitely is one of those things where, damn, it's really good, man. It introduced another mutant that has been rumored to being in the MCU for a long time, and where people were literally anticipating this particular individual of finally joining the MCU. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. But there's another hero, very, very subtle, very, very, if you don't catch it, you're not going to grasp it. And I had to go back and see it a couple of times before I realized what was going on, because you literally miss it. And it's kind of one of those, it's whatever. But when someone pointed it out to me, I was like, oh my God, how did I miss this? So you're going to get two characters. And here's an Easter egg of foreshadowing of what I'm talking about, is the character that I was just mentioning how you could easily miss them. Rumor is this particular character is also going to be having a series on Disney Plus. So this is kind of like their way of introducing this particular person, which is going to carry the mantle of a Marvel character that unfortunately passed away in the series. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. I'm kind of geeked out about it a little bit. Like I said, I wish my dad was still here, man, so we can go to these movies and see them. You know, because I know that man would just sit there in awe and amaze at how these characters once were, in these comics and now on the big screen and kind of creating their own story. One thing I do want to point out, though, when you talk about the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, versus the comic books, the comic does not necessarily follow. I'm sorry, the MCU does not necessarily follow the comic book, right? So there were some parts of the movies where you see them, and if you understand how the comics were written and what order they are, so on and so forth, you kind of see some quote-unquote inaccuracies. But Marvel has basically said that they kind of follow their own rules in the MCU. So people who are nitpicky about stuff like that, like I said, you're gonna find some irregularity there. But for the most part, it's kind of creating its own version of what takes place. So that's what I want to talk about there. So Now we're going to get into the final part of the podcast that I kind of want to talk about right now today. It's going to be something uncomfortable, but here at the E.I.T.H.R, we talk about, you guessed it, the elephant in the room. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so there's an app that I receive news on pretty much wherever in the country, sometimes out of the country, and it talks about a shooting that took place at Dallas Love Field Airport, obviously in Texas. According to this article that I read, there was a woman who went into the airport. She was dropped off, and then she apparently went into the bathroom and changed clothes before she decided to come out. So I'll read part of this article. This article appears to be from the New York Times. It says, 37-year-old woman was taken into custody Monday after she fired several rounds inside Dallas Love Field Airport in Texas before she was shot and injured by a police officer, authorities said. No other injuries were reported, police say, but the shooting sent travelers scrambling for cover and delayed several flights. Now, here is the part that's very, yeah. The woman, who was not identified, was dropped off at the airport just before 11 a.m., went to a ticket counter, and then appeared to change her clothes in the restroom before emerging and opening fire inside the airport. Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia said at a news conference Monday afternoon. The police officer inside the airport shot her, striking her in the lower extremities, and she was arrested and taken to a hospital, Garcia said. Her condition was not immediately clear after Monday afternoon. It was unclear who or what the woman was aiming at when she fired, Garcia said. The officer fired several rounds at her after she began shooting. And it says the lady's name, her age, who worked at the airport since 2020, said she saw people running through the airport. So there was a witness kind of going on about what happened with the situation, so on and so forth. I know this is going to kind of get into a touchy subject when people, especially when it comes to the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment is being able to right to bear arms, which is fine. Everyone, I do believe and I do honor that the Second Amendment is something that we should never change. But here's the elephant in the room. This is the problem. And I kind of posted this on my social media, and I said this the other day. When it comes to unarmed people, we all know what I mean by that. When it comes to unarmed people who appear to have guns, they don't necessarily have them, but they have what appears to be a gun, even though it's a bright screen and you can clearly see that it's not a weapon whatsoever. There have been people who have been killed for this, possessing what appears to be a firearm. Now, let's even go further and say the people who currently, or the people who do possess firearms, and they do shoot at police officers. Okay. No one is necessarily going to defend if a police officer happens to retaliate, striking that person or those people, and they happen to die in the middle of that gunfight. No one is defending those individuals. And I know this sounds like a fucking broken record, but I need you guys to pay attention to this. No one is saying those people didn't deserve to die. What we are saying is when you have a situation where a woman shoots in a crowd at an airport, and it says in the article that the police officers shot her in the lower extremities. That right there, in writing, clearly points out that if a police officer simply wants to detain or subdue or take control, keep you alive, they can. They can. If they want to disarm and be able to disable the individual, they have the training to do so. In San Leandro, California, the East Bay area, a year or two ago, there was a person with mental illness who was wielding, I believe, a machete inside the Walmart off of his Hesperian. Inside the store, police officers shot this man. I believe he died. They shot him because they were in fear of their safety of a man wielding a machete. Okay. I don't know exactly where this took place, but inside of another department store, there was a woman who was wielding a knife. I granted, a knife and machete are two completely different blades. Makes sense. Officers repeatedly told this woman to put the knife down. She refused to. She held it in her hand. Now, she did not charge the officers. She did not even take a step forward toward the officers from what I remember from the video that I saw. She just kept the knife down by her thigh waist area. She did not drop it. Almost smirking, daring the cop to do something. I don't know if she was mentally ill, medicated, not medicated. All I know is in the video, the same cop who was pointing his gun at this woman takes his gun, places his gun in the holster, and then grabs his taser and tases the woman. Ladies and gentlemen, when a police officer uses the justification they were in fearful for their safety or their life or the safety and well-being of others, I feel, based on the examples that I'm reading, I'm seeing, and I just discussed, that is something that they can always pull out their ass. Because there are two situations right here where a woman opens up fire in an airport, a woman is wielding a knife, police officers either have their service revolver drawn or they're shooting at the suspect. Yet they all managed to use non-lethal force in these two instances. But somebody who looks opposite of them, lethal force is needed because of safety. Listen, if you feel that the cops did nothing wrong in any of those situations, you are the fucking problem. You are the problem. Because there's no way in these situations. I have seen a video where a man is wielding a machete at a law enforcement officer. And this law enforcement officer used martial art tactics to take down the person with the machete. Non-lethal force. So, do we now give people the option of whether they feel their life is in danger or not in danger? It's a slippery slope. Because the man that was in San Leandro who was shot inside of the Walmart, he could have easily been tased and detained by law enforcement. He did not need to be shot. And if you are that scary of a situation with someone coming at you with a machete and you have all this weaponry, escalation of force, I believe they call it, and you still choose to grab your gun, that's because you know you can do that and get away with it. You know you can pull that card and use that as a scapegoat. I'm sorry, that is cowardly, and you don't deserve to have your job. Again, if you are in a position where your life is in danger and that person happens to be, sure, and there is no other means of getting out of the situation, absolutely. But again, You have a woman who did something very similar, and this officer was able to put his service revolver and holster it and grab his taser. Because if we all remember the Oscar Grant situation at the Fruit Grove BART station in East Oakland, they made a movie about this. The cops say he thought he grabbed his taser instead of his service revolver, despite shooting in Oscar Grant's back twice. I would imagine you know the difference between your service revolver and a fucking taser. I would think you know the difference. Matter of fact, you put them in two different places. Once you grab one and you press it against somebody, don't you know the difference between the weight, the feel, the grip? I think some cops use it as excuses, and the system allows them to get away with it if they're able to get them away with it. And the public, we have to just take it. We have to be okay with that. I do not wish that that woman with the knife was shot. I do not. I do not wish she was shot. I'm glad that the woman who opened fire in the airport was shot in the leg. I'm glad she was shot in the leg. What I wish is for police to use that same methodology on everybody, and having lethal force be a last resort. Now, for the trolls out there, again, if the cops are being shot at by somebody and they return fire, you are trying to save your life and the life of everybody else involved with that. I completely understand that situation. But it clearly says in this particular article that this cop shot her in the lower extremity. He was not shot 60 to 90 fucking times. She was shot in the lower extremities. And then once that happened, they were able to detain the woman. Why them and nobody else? And if anyone has a problem with, well, if you have a gun and the cops see it, you deserve to be shot. Okay. Then that perspective right there means not everyone has a Second Amendment right. Not everybody has the right to the Second Amendment. Not everyone is allowed to bear arms. So now we get into the sticky situation. Okay. Well, who is allowed to bear arms? It's a rhetorical question, because you have people who believe this group should. And you have people over here that says this group shouldn't. The tricky part is determining who's bad, who's good. That's the tricky part. Who's the good guy, who's the bad guy? Because if we sit back and say that these people here are one or the other, is that a broad statement? Is that a general statement? Do these people get off because of their occupation? Do these people get charged because of their lifestyle? What's the difference? I feel that if you are a law enforcement, you need to be held a higher accountable. Granted, your situations and circumstances in which you work under do cause stress. I'm not ignorant to that. But what I am saying, again, if you can use restraint and non-lethal force over here, why couldn't you use it over here? And I think that's where the misunderstanding comes from everyone as a whole. Because again, on social media, you have people who want to yell and scream about what's right and what's not. But no one's looking at the situation of, well, if this person looks to have a gun and the cops are fearful of that, what about their Second Amendment? Because anything you say against that now will fuel the fire of racial profiling. And I know people don't want to hear that part. But as I talked about prior on another one of the episodes, is when you take away the right for women to make the decision whether they want to bear a child or not. Yes, it's not written in the Constitution. It's not letter of the law. But it was in the Constitution via spirit of the law. So if we're looking at letter of the law that a person wields a weapon and the police feels that their life and safety and the others are threatened, and you shoot center mass for everybody. What was the exception for this person versus the exception for these people over here? You have to ask that question. You should at least stop and think, okay, why this and not this? Because if you sit back and you realize and you acknowledge it and you still choose to overlook it, that means you are part of the problem as well. I think more police officers do need more social training, because if you really pay attention, majority, not all, majority of people who become law enforcement tend to be individuals, and this is all based on location and geography, but they tend to come from backgrounds that cannot relate to those people that they're also looking to patrol. Most of the people who go into law enforcement don't come from those neighborhoods. They have no relation to them. They don't understand those lifestyles. I remember having a conversation with a police officer in downtown Sacramento a few years ago. And he is from Rancho Cordova. He grew up in Rancho Cordova. He says, I want to be a police officer because I understand what it's like to have cops come through neighborhoods and profile people and judge people based on. He said, look, man, I grew up poor, cool cop. He's like, I grew up poor. I know what it's like to have cops come through the neighborhood and profile people based on what they look like and where they come from and what they appear to be. I understand, but I wanted to get into the force so I can change that mindset. Basically, those were his words. So he got into the force. And he says, I do my best to understand what I look like versus who I'm approaching. I do what I can to make sure what they may be thinking is the reason that I'm approaching them is not the reason that I'm approaching them. And I'm approaching you because you did something wrong. Here's what you did wrong. It's not because of this, that, and the other. It's because you did something wrong. Understand there are police officers out there. This is not all cops, but there are police officers out there who will use the most minute excuse to profile somebody. I have done it. I have been a part of it. I have been going 72 in a 70 and got pulled over for speeding. And a police officer told me, next time, don't be the slowest speedster. I'm getting on a 2-lane road in Nevada, getting passed up by cars because I'm going 72, according to him. But my speedometer showed 70. I know you got a 5-mile grace period, you can argue back and forth, but how am I getting passed by people for going too slow? But you happen to let those folks go and pull me over because I was going fast. Sometimes these laws are used as justifications and reasons to pull somebody over. And I have a friend who was dating a young man who was into the police academy. And the conversation she had with him made her realize the conversation that her and I had about how people are profiled and the mindset. And her action is this what they're training folks in the academy? I'm not going to sit back and say that she's right, but I am going to sit back and say that she's possibly onto something. She's possibly onto something. So that's what that is. I just hope that everyone who can have an open mind and understand that a lot of these assumptions and everything comes from a place. Yes, there are people who cry wolf. Yes, there are people who will use an excuse. Yes, there are people who will embellish something and leave out what it was that they did to create, provoke, or antagonize. Absolutely. So it makes it hard when someone actually is telling the truth about something for you to believe their story. It's kind of like with women back in the 50s when they would talk about how they were having a rough day or something at work or something with the children or something with their husband. Back then, before women had rights, you got written off. You kind of got overlooked. You were more prescribed medication to deal with your anxiety. So now you got this pilled up housewife who's totally medicated, so no one has to hear her mouth. That's kind of where we're at in society right now. And again, you get the few, but they get the most attention when it comes to some of the bullshit that goes on in the world. And I think the best way for us to solve that problem is to take ourselves out of the equation and put ourselves in the shoes of those that we don't truly understand the best way we are able to, and walk a few blocks in those shoes and see what it's like, right? I think that's probably the best way to go. But it's very scary because then you have to understand that the world that you believe to be reality, it may get altered and changed when you look at it from the eyes and walk in the shoes of those that you claim don't know what they're talking about. You might actually have a realization. And it's interesting. It's extremely interesting. I'm glad nobody was hurt in the shooting in Texas. I remember them coming up with some kind of micro licensing or micro branding for ammunition, where there's a serial number and some type of tracing on shells for when shootings happen. It makes it easier to bring it back to the owner of the gun. So many people are against that. And it's almost like you want your cake, you want to eat it too, but you're getting mad at the fact that it also gains you weight. You can't have one without the other, especially when you have idiot people out here doing some of the dumbest shit and making it look bad for everybody. So if everyone has the rights to bear arms, no one should be killed for bearing them. And if someone is bearing arms and you are able to de-escalate a situation, why not de-escalate it for everybody? Especially those that you can clearly see is of minimal threat compared to some of the scenarios that we tend to justify and use as excuses for people. This is not saying criminals don't deserve to be punished. What I am saying is those who are able to live should not die. That's what I'm saying. So, that's all I have to say about the topics today. Recap again, when you guys get home from work or whatever the case is, try putting on some nice music to help you decompress from your day. Whether it's jazz, R&B, country, whatever it may possibly is. Just shed off everything you had on from work. Play that music, go get you something to snack on, and just try to not think about the workload that you just left at home or you just left at the office. Don't think about traffic, don't think about anything. Try to just enjoy that moment as best as you can so you can give yourself that much more of a peace of mind. Okay? Simple as that. It's your boy D-Cal here at the GNS HQ here in Sacramento for the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Social media one more time. On Instagram and Twitter is the E.I.T.H.R, T-H-E, E-I-T-H-R. If you go to the YouTube page and subscribe, just search for the company THEGNSINC. Subscribe to that. Converse with us right there in the chat, conversation, comments, so on and so forth. I will be back here on Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which I believe is 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 p.m. over there across the pond. I appreciate it. Much love to you guys, and have a good one. We out.
Hello, my name is Candace Romero, and it has been my absolute privilege and honor to be teaching people about doTERRA's essential oils for the last 9 years and helping people live their most vibrant life. If you'd like to learn more about my natural solutions, please feel free to contact me on Facebook at Bay Area Terra Tribe Essential Oils and Natural Solutions, or check out my website, my.doterra.com/Romero. That's my.doterra.com/ROMERO. Thank you.
State ascoltando il podcast E.I.T.H.R con D.K.